Hi everybody, welcome to your lesson that's all about biotic and abiotic factors. So remember that the prefix bio means life. So remember, if you're in biology class, you're in a class that is studying life. Here we're talking about biotic factors. These are living or once living things that are in an ecosystem. Now, what do I mean by once living? I mean anything that was once alive but maybe is no longer. Think about like dead leaves on the ground or a log on the ground. Even bones that you might be able to find or an animal carcass, these are biotic factors. They're either living or once living. Now, when we're talking about living, we don't just mean breathing through lungs either. We talk about fish and how they use their gills and they're alive and breathing in that way. We even can talk about plants and how plants are alive. So remember, we're just not talking about like animals that walk on the ground when we're talking about biotic. We're talking about all living or once living things. Now, abiotic factors are the non-living things in an ecosystem. Non-living means they were never living. Rocks, sunlight, water. These are things that are considered abiotic factors. Okay, now let's talk about competition. Competition is when more than one individual or even a whole population that's living in an ecosystem is relying on the same resource. So for example, biotic factors in an ecosystem might rely on an abiotic factor. So the foxes might be reliant on the water that's in the nearby pond for survival. We're going to talk about this a little bit in further detail in just a minute. So remember, an ecosystem is all the biotic, meaning the living or once living things, and the abiotic things in that ecosystem interacting together when they depend on each other, okay? How they interact with each other, how the fish are interacting with the coral reefs, how the rabbits and the things are relying on the nearby soil to create burrows. All of the things, how they're interacting in an area creates an ecosystem. So you can push pause here. I'm going to move my video. You can push pause here and see if you can't write down the biotic and the abiotic factors that you see in this photo. I'm going to give you a second to push pause, grab a pen, and try to identify the biotic and the abiotic factors. Okay, hopefully you've pushed pause and you've come back. And I will now talk you through just a few of the ones that I see here. So obviously the biotic factors, those are going to be the easier ones to identify. We see fish, we see frogs, we see turtles, we see snakes, we see bugs, we see ducks, we see eagles, we see birds in the trees. We even see plant life, trees, grasses, shrubberies, algae, moss in the water. All of these things are going to be considered biotic factors. The abiotic factors that we might be able to identify are the stones both on the shore and in the water. The water itself, the amount of sunlight that is making its way through the water, the amount of sunlight that's there, generally speaking. All of these would be the abiotic factors that we would be able to find in this ecosystem. Now remember, we talked about how biotic factors and abiotic factors are going to be interacting. This is how biotic factors are able to survive when they're dependent on the non-living things around them. Okay, chloroplasts in plant cells are going to allow them to interact with the sunlight. When they interact with the sunlight, they are better able to go through the process of photosynthesis and thus allow their survival. Animals, as you know, are dependent on water and air to breathe. They're dependent on the minerals. Fungus and bacteria are dependent on the minerals that might be in the soil. Plants are dependent on water and soil and sunlight, air. All of these things are interacting together to create a balanced ecosystem.